Welcome to the Shadetree Garage. And this is going to be something completely different. We're going to talk about this vehicle, which is a Yerf Dog Scout. Now here in the Shadetree Garage, I've got the Yerf Dog Scout. Now the Yerf Dog was a utility vehicle, side by side of course, manufactured by the Yerf Dog Company of Mississippi, starting in 1996 through 2005. At that point, they discontinued manufacturing and sold all their inventory and their parts. Another company did buy their parts, and they're the supplier of replacement parts today. The Yerf has a fairly small engine. I think it's 150 cc's, about 20 horsepower, and it uses a electronic ignition. They were plagued by mechanical issues and problems getting parts. That's not so much the case today. They were sold primarily by places like Tractor Supply. And my in-laws bought this one in the late, about 98, 99, from Tractor Supply, and they used it on their farm. My in-laws later replaced this with a larger one. I think something with a larger bed. The bed on the back of the Yerf Dog is small, didn't carry much, and I think they got a mule by maybe John Deere, I think. The Yerf Dog, the company also sold go-karts, and basically what you have with the Yerf Dog is go-kart running gear on a bigger frame and a much higher center of gravity. In a go-kart, you sit very low to the ground. Of course, they're designed for young adults and kids. They probably sold many more go-karts than they did utility vehicles, but that's only my guess. Now, the reason the Yerf Dog Scout is in my garage, the Shadetree Garage, is because of reliability issues. And it was given to me by my wife's brother, my brother-in-law, and it was given to him by their stepfather, who had replaced it, of course, with the John Deere unit. This mostly sat unused at my brother-in-law's house in his barn, mostly because it was so persnickety to get the thing to start and run. When it started, it ran great, did fine, but as I found out after he gave it to us, it was a two-edged sword. On days it would start and run, it did great. On other days, it wouldn't hit a lick. You'd run the battery down trying to get it to start. Nothing. No signs of life. Now, if this had been an automobile, I would have been much more familiar with how to troubleshoot it. And of course, the Yerf is really simple. It's as simple as my old Ferguson tractors. All it takes is fuel, air, and a spark for the engine to run. Very simple, very simple. However, when you're unfamiliar with any of the running gear, and you're not even sure where the carburetor is, it gets a little difficult. Now, I downloaded the manual for the thing, and it shows exploded parts on the whole thing. Great, but it never tells you how to take the thing apart. And that's what I'm going to show you today. I was having, the first problem we had with the Yerf Dog I diagnosed was fuel delivery. Now the Yerf uses a vacuum driven fuel pump, just like a lot of other small motor, zero turn mowers, a lot of vehicles use that vacuum pulse driven fuel pump. And so the fuel pump wasn't putting out much of anything, so I replaced the fuel pump and got the fuel delivery issue taken care of. Now the Scout had sat in my brother-in-law's barn for years, and I assumed that there was probably the carburetor, the floating carburetor, and maybe the jets were gummed up. So I thought, well, I'm going to take the carburetor off. Well, that was a story of its own, but I'll show you, I'll give you an indication of how you take it off, and maybe some tips for having more luck getting it off than I did. I did finally get it off, and then I ran into an issue I never have had before. The screws that held the carburetor bowl, fuel bowl on, were stripped, totally stripped. I couldn't. I tried every which way. I tried to cut a slot in them with a Dremel and unscrew them, but they were just whatever gorilla had rebuilt that carburetor in the past had really cranked down those stupid screws. I couldn't get them loose. No way, no how. Well, I decided to bite the bullet and replace the carburetor, assuming again that it was gummed up. So shopping around, the company that bought all the Yerf Dog engine replacement parts has the brand new carburetor they're happy to sell you $150. Youch! You know, this thing was free, and I hate to throw, I really was hesitant to spend that much money on a replacement carburetor. So I looked around, and on our favorite auction site, I found a seller that had new carburetors for about a third the price. I can handle that. So I ordered that. And so while looking at the Yerf, I decided that I'm also going to replace, well, while I was waiting on the carburetor to come, I wasn't getting any spark. I found my tester and put it in line, and it's one of the testers where it's got a neon bulb that will fire when the spark fires. No spark at all. So that pushed me back to either the coil or the electronic ignition unit. Well, both of those were very inexpensive, and I found those on our favorite auction site and picked them up dirt cheap. And so I had the carburetor and the ignition parts coming, and unfortunately they took 3 weeks to get here. And it seemed like I was waiting forever for those parts. Anyway, now they were all fairly simple to change, except the carburetor. Anyway, I keep talking about the carburetor. Let me show you underneath the hood of the Yerf and give you an idea of what it takes to change the carburetor. Now, I looked on YouTube, and I was looking for videos on how you. Now, there are plenty of this carburetor is used on a lot of different machines, and there's plenty of videos about how to rebuild it, how to take it apart, how to clean it, how to get the jets, you know, how to unclog all the passages. Great. Unfortunately, I had to figure out first how to get it off the Yerf. Now, those other guys were taking the carburetor off of dune buggies or go-karts. Well, the engine is out in the open, and it's not a problem to take that carburetor off. So now, again, you have to remember this. Now, this wasn't a really difficult process, but when you've never worked on this kind of engine with this kind of carburetor, you know, I was kind of going into it. Even the manual really didn't help as far as disassembly and figuring things out. So it was a learning process. I'll put it that way. All right, let's take a look under the hood. And actually, we're not looking under the hood, the front of the car, of the thing. We're going to look under the seats and under the dump bed on the back. You'll see in just a moment. All right, you're back. We're looking at the cockpit of the Yerf, steering wheel, dashboard, junk in the dash, and the two seats. Now, to get to the engine, you raise the seats. Now, there's the front half of the engine. Right there's the fuel tank. Holds about 5.5 gallons. The fuel pump right there, fuel filter. All pretty standard. Let's see, let's look at this. This is the choke cable. It's supposed to mount underneath the driver's seat, but it broke long ago. All right, now, and you can see the new part down here. Maybe you can. Get the seatbelt out of the way. All right, here's the carburetor. All right, now let's get it down here a little closer. This black part is actually the intake, and the carburetor sits back here. Let's see, where's the? Here is. You can't really see it. The throttle cable. Get down here more. Throttle cable connects here. You adjust the idle screw there. Now see, this thing has all this structure around it, and it's one of those cases where you can't get there from here when it goes to trying to get. Now let's go back to the front of the carburetor and the intake. The carburetor goes inside the intake. It's hard plastic, and then it's secured with a clamp, and that holds the carburetor. The carburetor does not mount in any way to the engine like a vehicle carburetor. It's clamped in the front, and then it's clamped in the back with the exhaust, or not, pardon me, exhaust. All right, this is the view underneath the seats. The battery, of course, is right there. To get to see the rest of the engine, drivetrain, transmission, etc., the Yerf has this little cute little dump bed. There we go. Now, let's see. Move these damn seatbelts out of the way. Let's see. There's ignition. Coils over here, and you really, let me get this out of the way so you can see the back of the carburetor, maybe. All right, now you see the back of the carburetor, and there's a clamp there. That clamp goes to comes out here and winds up over here on this assembly. Now, it took me a long time to find it, but you can take this connector, take this pipe off. The problem is that as this comes from the factory, everything's fit together tight and you don't have any slack. You can't pull this backwards very easy. You can't pull it back off the back of the carburetor. So let's go to the front again. All right. All right, now you see the carburetor. These seatbelts out of the way. All right. So when I removed the carburetor, I took out the bolts that you see down here. I took those out and lifted the intake up with the carburetor enough so I could get the intake out. Get the intake out from the front of the carburetor once the clamp was loose. Now, getting a screwdriver down on those clamps can be another problem because you have all these bars and structure in the way. So it's not exactly user-friendly to get to. But, I mean, like I say, it just took a little experimentation to get it done. All right. Like I said, the only other parts I changed. Let's go back here. All right. Get these seatbelts back out of the way. I changed the coil. There's a rubber boot that's supposed to go over it. The coil, and that goes, the other end of the coil has the spark plug cable, and the spark plug connector connects to the spark plug, and this of course is the ignition module, and there's a clamp up here that this little thing is supposed to slide down on. Let's see if I can make it do it. Maybe. I did it once. Come on. Well, I did it. Yes, I did. All right. So that's your look under the, well, I was going to say under the hood, but actually under the bed. The bed and the seats of the Yerf Dog Scout. All right, so that's a look under the hood at the Yerf Dog Scout. And would I recommend you buying one if you could get it cheap and you knew it ran? The parts can be cheap if you know where to look for them. And like I say, it's a pretty simple machine. Now, if you've got to tear into the engine, you may be a better small engine mechanic than I am. And if you feel as though your time and trouble are worth it, go for it. This one, I knew this one could run, and because it did run when we got it. And I felt as though it was worth investing the time and money in, because it's a handy little machine on a farm. Even if all you're doing is, clearing some brush out of fence rows, it's just real handy to have. So yeah, I would suggest, unless you got more money and you want to buy a much more expensive utility vehicle, the Yerf is okay. Now, I replaced the carburetor, and this thing runs like a striped ass ape. It's amazing how fast it is now, and as a result of that, now this is equipped with seat belts. But as it used to run, I never felt the need for them. But now, the top speed is supposed to be 23 miles an hour. And I will tell you that if I'm running very fast, I'm certainly going to have seatbelt on, just for safety. Because I've got a big hill up and down, and I learned a long time ago that you need to be safe when you're on a hill. Well, that's it. I hope if you have a Yerf Dog Scout, or a machine that uses that carburetor, that you have success getting the carburetor off. And I hope if you get the carb off that the screws haven't been tightened by Godzilla or King Kong or somebody, and that you can get the thing apart. If not, there are replacement carburetors, and I can testify that they work really well. All right, that's going to do it for the Shadetree Garage this evening. Hope you had a great day, and we'll see you next time. You never know what we're going to have here in the Shadetree Garage.